It goes a little bit with that movie because it is more about building support for your proposed change, which at your stage in this project, you're probably not thinking about the change just yet. You're probably still doing quite a bit of research and looking into things. But we're going to review where you're at, and then I'll show you how this all unfolds, okay? Questions before we get started? So, in the course text, it talks about that if the macro social worker would like to promote change, change usually comes from a couple of different places. One of the places that it can come from is when we want to improve the quality of life for clients or communities. The other place that it comes from is when we want to seek change in an organization within or for employees for better serving the clients. So those are two different ways where a macro social worker might get involved to promote some type of change. It might be an organizational change that you see, a procedural change within the organization, or it could be, and what you'll probably be working with, maybe not, I don't know, but what you'll probably be working with more is some type of change to improve the quality of clients. It's kind of what your project is. So, questions we want to ask is, how did this happen? So, for example, you may be discovering that there are some difficulties among the populations, or a problem that exists among the population that you're exploring or researching. And one of the first questions you're going to ask is, how did this happen? What caused it to happen? And now what are we going to do about it? That's the breakdown of Chapter 9, basically. So up to this point, you're exploring kind of all the information. You're gathering all of the information together, and you're going to start breaking it down to kind of figure out, well, what do we think about this? We have all of this information, so what do we think might be the cause of this particular issue? For example, homelessness or something like that. You may be researching all of the people who are homeless. Why are they homeless? What are the demographics of them? Where are they? What are their needs? How are their needs being met? That is the biggest jug of water I've seen. This is very distracting. I'm like, is that milk? Sorry. Anyway, I had to call you out. I'm sorry. Okay, so this is what we're talking about now. When we get to the point of saying, now what are we going to do about it? This is more of one of the end stages of your project, but it's a piece that fits in there. My hope is that you've been sort of following this all along, and then you've read chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that you feel that direction going, and you know that eventually what's going to come is you're going to have a solution to this problem. So be thinking that way. So you assess the population, the problem, and the area first in depth, and then you're going to develop a solution. Before we begin to build support for the macro change, you have to have completed enough research regarding the problem, the population, and the arena, and then believe that the research indicates that there's an issue. So it's not just a guess. Remember when we first started on the first week, and we were thinking, well, I already know the answer to my problem. I already know that, homelessness is caused by poverty, or poverty is caused by lack of education, or, you already had a few assumptions. But what the research does is it is your prove it, okay? It is the thing that proves whether your assumption is correct or not, because you could be incorrect in assuming whatever it is you're assuming. More than likely, you're going to have a good kind of background knowledge about whether it's true or not, and what your assumptions were if that comes to pass. But you cannot actually know for sure unless you have empirical evidence and data. So we need to have an idea of who our target population is, and in the course text, this means who is going to benefit from the assistance of any kind of intervention. So who are we talking about here? And you're going to be narrowing that down. what are the issues facing that population? Or at least have it narrowed down. You may have a population like homeless veterans in Arlington or something like that, and there are so many issues facing that population or reasons why this could come about, or issues that are facing them, such as where to live or how to get food or how to get a job, that it's almost overwhelming. And so what your group is going to be doing is narrowing that down a little bit to maybe a couple of issues, and hopefully eventually to one thing that you all would like to focus on with this group. And that's important, the narrow down process, because it can be really overwhelming to see all of the things that are going on with one population. So let's go back to chapters 3 and 4, and we must look back on what we learned about the population and developing an understanding of their perspective. So when we did chapter 4, we looked at oppression. We talked about our own ideas, remember, about this population that we're working with, what our own preconceived notions were or prejudices were about the population that we're working with. We talked about how oppression and other factors play into what's going on with that population. And we were able to narrow down the population we seek to assist. Hopefully, at this point, you're narrowing it down into an age group or a gender or some type of demographic information that's a little more specific. For example, elderly, if you're going to look at elderly, you're going to need to have a specific definition of what that means. Because if I'm looking at it from an outside viewpoint, I'm not sure what elderly means. Are you defining it by who? By what? I know some of your human behavior information, your human behavior course text will tell you that what scholars say about the definitions of what elderly means. Same with teens or being aged out of foster care. You know, at what age? And is that in Texas, or is it the same age everywhere? Or, you know, what demographic exactly are we looking at here? And that'll be, at the same time while you're researching, it'll be sort of coming up to you, okay? So research will start showing through scholarly information, these are the people that need the help, okay? Is there a chance for them to participate in helping to create the changes needed? That's something to consider. Who are these people and how would they be part of the process? And then who are the allies of this population? In other words, who else might care about this issue? So these are things that we talked about in chapter 3 and chapter 4. I hope it's ringing a little bit of a bell. Y'all don't look like your bell's ringing right now, but it's okay. So then we looked at the problem or the issue, okay? And what is it that we're trying to assess? We developed a condition statement to help define our efforts for change. So last week you all started working on this condition statement to narrow down, you know, what exactly is it that is the problem? For example, with aging out, what are some of the problems that you determined there?
I think one was lack of places to live, I guess, and
Okay.
a lot of it was not really known and what resources were available.
Okay.
So I think that was actually what I was just reading about last night, and then also the ones that are available, but there's this big disconnect of, okay, let me tell you all this.
Okay.
So you can learn about it and then do it. And so just what, and then, you know,
So what you're saying is maybe you discovered there's information out there, but maybe the information is not accessible to the clients. So that's an accessibility issue. And so those are the things that are going to start showing up. Like you said, you found some resources, right? And you thought, well, maybe this is a lack or a need, and there are resources available, but then there's still this gap in services for the clients. And those are the kinds, that's a perfect example of the kinds of things that are going to start showing up in your research. What is the history of the problem? This means, you know, all over in the specific area that you're exploring. This means, what's the history of Texas? What might be the history in the United States, what might be the history in just major cities, what might be the history in all the communities. That's up to you and your group to narrow it down. I'm not saying you have to do a comparison between this is what the nation looks like with this issue and this is what Texas looks like, but it's very helpful. And a lot of the stats that you find are going to do that. Those are going to be the types of things that you'll find. So, and then what do the professionals say about the problem? Collect data and learn to make it meaningful in your current situation. So not just what all the data means, but you're going to have to start picking out how does this apply to our people and our project and what we're working on. So that's just a recap. Also, from chapter 4, we began to develop a hypothesis. And why do we believe this situation is occurring? So based on, and this is from the course text, based on foregoing analysis of the problem and the population, what seem to be the dominant themes in understanding the cause and effect relationships. So in chapter 4, you were developing some sort of themes about this. Why do we think this is happening? So we sort of just demonstrated that a little bit with, we see that they need a place to live. Did you find that they don't have places to live, or like, did you find a connection between them accessing those places, or?
It was more of access. There's a lot of different, like, actual, like, places for them to live, and then there's some that actually, like, in them, kind of almost like a stipend kind of thing.
Okay.
To where they were given, like, extra, like, money, I guess, to help pay for it.
Okay.
I guess you could say almost kind of like Section 8 housing,
Okay.
but not.
Okay.
In the way that it's kind of structured.
Okay. So there are things available to them. You have to kind of figure out what the connections are, and I think it sounds like you're doing that. So what do you think would be the problem? If you had to say what the actual problem is, you would identify that.
There's no connection, I think, between once they age out to people who are willing to help them.
Okay.
Because they think they're 18 now, they're on their own, they can do this. I think they've had no formal, I guess for them just being in the system is something that's not, normal. So they haven't had anybody helping them. Right. I also found out last night you can re-enter the foster system.
Really?
Until you're 21. If you don't feel that you're ready, and it's like and they have to approve it also.
Okay. That is very interesting. That is very interesting. So it does sound like you're making some good connections and you're understanding that there is some type of relationship between why they're not getting their needs met and that there is something available to them. Good job. So before developing a change strategy, however, it is necessary to be clear on the nature of the proposed intervention. So let me write this out. So let's go back to this process of planned change. Remember, I like to do this all the time. Where's the course text? Talk a little more about this. Okay, so we have engage, right? Assess. This is where y'all are at right now. Okay, and then plan, and then you have your intervention. And then you evaluate, and terminate. That doesn't mean you have the process. Okay, so we've gone through part of this process of engaging. Okay, right now you're engaging the system in the issue. So you're engaging with the population by talking to people, who serve that population. That's the engagement process right there. Then you're going into this assessment process when you're gathering the information, but there's this key factor there is you've got to assess the information. So that's kind of where you're getting to right now is you're collecting all of this information, but you're going to have to determine now what does this mean for us? What does all of this mean for this particular group? And then you'll go into this planning. So this particular chapter talks about designing the intervention. So they go ahead and get into, okay, how would we